Today I'm going to make Samoa sugar cookies. So if you're not familiar with what a Samoa is, it's a Girl Scout cookie and it has coconut, it has caramel and chocolate all on a shortbread. But this time I'm gonna make it a little bit chewy and put it on more of a sugar cookie base. For the sugar cookie base, I'm going to need 3.5 cups flour, 1.5 cups room temperature butter, 1.5 cups granulated sugar. We're gonna do 1/2 teaspoon vanilla extract, 1/2 teaspoon coconut extract, 2 eggs, 2 egg yolks to make it extra chewy, and then 1.5 teaspoons of baking soda and 1/4 teaspoon of fine sea salt. To start it out, I'm going to take my butter and my sugar. I'm gonna put it in my standing mixer with my paddle attachment and cream it. What that entails is whipping it, beating it on high for 2 full minutes, scraping down the side with that silicone scraper and getting it to change to a light fluffy texture. You're gonna see all the sugar dissolve in the mixture, and that's when you know you're done. All right, we are back now after whipping with our paddle attachment. We're going to scrape off that paddle. You can tell that it's nice and fluffy. All those sugar granules that are shaped like a diamond have broken through the butter and created tiny little air pockets that will then expand in the oven and help leaven or rise your cookies. So that is why creaming your butter and sugar properly is always very important while baking. We're gonna scrape those edges, and then we're gonna add in the rest of the wet ingredients. So we've got 2 egg yolks and 2 eggs. Oops, a little shell. Let's get that out. Shells are magnetic to shells, so just use a bigger half to grab it. Okay, gonna kind of fold that in. Then we're gonna add in the vanilla. Always use a pure vanilla extract for the best flavor, and then the coconut. Fold that in again. And then we're gonna add in the flour and the baking powder and salt. Now we're gonna just mix it in our standing mixer with that paddle attachment until a dough forms. Don't overmix. All right, the dough has formed, so now we're gonna scrape it off of this paddle mixer. It only took maybe 20 seconds to get this dough to form, so you definitely don't wanna overmix it. If you overmix your dough at this point, it will become very, very chewy, like an unappetizing chew, kind of like you're trying to chew a Starburst or some chewy candy, not a cookie. So definitely don't wanna make it chewy and tough. Scrape that off, and now we're gonna let this dough refrigerate so that it can meld the flavors, solidify the butter, and just really make this cookie chewy in a good way and not spread too much. But since it's a roll-out cookie, I like to first roll it out, because if you've ever tried to roll out a cold cookie dough, you'll know it's nearly impossible. And to do it, you have to warm it back up, which completely defeats the purpose, since you need that butter to be solidified to lessen the spread. So what I do is I get 2 pieces of parchment paper and I lay the cookie dough somewhat in the middle and squish it down. Then I use my rolling pin to roll out the cookie dough. And I have to hold it in place a little bit. This way you're also not adding extra flours onto your cookie dough. Like if you roll out a cookie onto a floured surface, then you're adding more flour, which makes the cookie more bland and more tough. But this is a sweet sugar cookie, so we don't want to add flour. We want to just have the dough. So we're gonna do it between these parchment papers before we even refrigerate it. Then when we're ready, we'll just pop it out of the fridge, cut it, bake it, and finish the rest of the cookie. Now, one batch is a little bit bigger than a full parchment sheet, so I do have a second one on hand. It won't quite fill out a full one though, so I'll just split that one in half. What I do is I just roll it out to get it all about the same thickness, and then I'll cut that off and put it into another sheet, just like this. Okay, let me get a knife. Cut that excess, cut this excess, cut all this. Do this, make sure it fills even, maybe a little bit more. Okay, perfect. Cut a little bit off of this. And I'll grab my other parchment sheet, put it on one side, and I'll fold it. Perfect. So now that it's rolled out, I'm gonna put it in the fridge for at least 30 minutes, ideally 3 hours, to get that perfect melded, delicious flavor and chew. Okay, the dough has chilled, so now we're gonna use my round cookie cutter, and I'm going to cut out cookies and place it on a light metal cookie sheet lined with parchment paper. Light metal conducts the most even heat. Dark metal is gonna burn your cookies, so get rid of any dark metal pans you might have. And then like a colored light metal does okay, but just solid light is the best. We're gonna cut them all out and place them in the oven at 375 for 8 to 9 minutes. And then we'll let them cool before dipping them in chocolate and topping them with that delicious caramel frosting, caramel coconut topping, and then end with a nice drizzle of chocolate on top. Okay, so these are ready for the oven. Okay, now that the cookies are done, I like to come in with a larger cookie scoop and just get a nice crisp, larger cookie cutter, not scoop, and get a nice crisp edge of the cookie, and then we're gonna let them sit and cool completely before we continue on. While we wait for those cookies to chill, the cookie dough to chill, we're gonna start on all of the toppings. So first we're gonna make a double batch of my salted butter caramel. It needs, for double, 2 cups of sugar, and then a cup and like 1/3 of, yes, a cup of 1/3 of heavy whipping cream. Then we've got a pinch of salt for both, so 2 pinches, and then 12 tablespoons of unsalted butter. What we're gonna do is we're gonna put the 2 cups of sugar in a saucepan over medium-high heat, and we're gonna stir it constantly. And while the sugar sits there, it's gonna start clumping up and all coming together, but don't freak out. Keep stirring. Eventually it will start to melt and caramelize very quickly. As soon as you see it melting, you need to keep stirring, and as soon as it's almost all the way melted, quickly start adding in the butter, just like tablespoon by tablespoon, whisking it up, cooling it down, and then turn off the heat completely. Add the cream, add the pinch of salt, whisk it up, and then we'll have our batches of caramel. We're gonna use 1 batch of caramel to make frosting with 6 cups of powdered sugar and 1 cup of butter. And then we're also going to use it for our coconut topping. We're gonna drizzle it and mix it with 2 cups of sweetened shredded coconut. Last, we're gonna melt this chocolate and we're gonna dip the bottoms of the cookies in so that it has that iconic Samoa look. So let's get started on the caramel. Okay, we're over on my stovetop. I like to use a wooden spoon. And then we're just gonna put the sugar in and we're gonna stir. And I'm gonna let it stir here and start to melt, and then I'll bring you back at the clumpy stage. Okay, here we go. It's starting to get clumpy. Don't freak out, just keep stirring and you're gonna see it melt. I'll bring you back once it starts to melt. Okay, it's starting to melt. So this is when you wanna start breaking down any big crystals from the sugar and stir. You can see it starting to change to a very tan light yellow color. That means it's on its way to be caramelized. Sugar has zero flavor until caramelized. So this is where we're getting our flavor. We're gonna be a little patient, let it get a little bit darker, break up as much as we can before we start shocking it with that butter. But we also want to toe the line because we don't want it to get burnt or overdone, which can happen fast. So we're watching it change color. We're really breaking down that sugar. The longer you go, the more those big clumps will melt, but also too long and you're in trouble. Okay, right about here is where I'm comfortable. I'm gonna turn it down. There's still some clumps, but they will start to melt as we keep cooking over a lower heat. We're gonna add in that butter. And we're gonna stir quickly. We're gonna add a little bit more butter. Keep stirring. Starting to look a lot more like caramel. I'm gonna add some more. The caramel is so hot right now and does not have enough liquid that if you got it out, it would just turn hard as a rock candy. So you gotta add in all this liquid and cool it down. The cream will be next, and that will really create that like syrup that you're looking for. Okay, we're gonna turn off the heat. It's definitely all caramelized. Get the rest of this butter out without burning my finger. Okay, and now we're gonna take it, we're gonna add the cream in. Really slowly add that cream in. Don't wanna shock it too much. Now we're getting that syrup look. There we go. It's looking good. And then we're gonna add the salt. And it's done. Look at that beautiful caramel. We're gonna split it in half and start the frosting. Okay, we're back from making that caramel. So now what I always like to do when I use this specific caramel recipe is I just put it through a strainer to catch any sugar granules that maybe didn't fully melt, which is totally normal and just fine. You did nothing wrong. We just get it right out of it. Get every last delicious bit of caramel. Okay. And then the sugar that didn't melt, which is totally fine. Now we have our caramel ready to make the frosting and the coconut filling with. So now I'm gonna add half of this caramel to a mixer with 6 cups sugar and a cup of butter and whip until nice and smooth. Okay, now I've whipped together that frosting. It's a little bit runny, but it's gonna go perfect with the coconut topping. So now I have the rest of that double batch of caramel, and I'm gonna put in 2 cups of sweetened coconut. I'm just gonna stir it to coat it all together. And we're gonna coat this on top of, we're gonna plop this on top of the cookies after the caramel frosting, double caramel. And then we're again gonna melt these, but first we gotta get those cookies prepared. Okay, the cookies have cooled. So now we're gonna make their chocolate bottoms. So I saw someone recently, I've melted the chocolate. I just put it in for 30 seconds at a time in the microwave. It took me 3 times, stirring vigorously in between to not burn the chocolate. So I saw someone on TikTok do this recently, and I wanted to see if it would work because it would be a lot less messy. So we're gonna pick up the cookie. We're gonna just make a little dollop of chocolate on a parchment paper because chocolate doesn't stick to parchment. And then we're gonna just flatten it out. Hopefully that makes a nice, good chocolate bottom. Then we're gonna put them in the freezer to set before we put on that caramel frosting and caramel coconut mixture. Okay, it worked just great. You can see this cookie has chocolate on the bottom. I could have added a little bit more chocolate to get all the way around the edge, but I think it's good. So then we're gonna top it with the caramel frosting that we made earlier. Just a good even layer on the cookie. And then we're gonna scoop on a good amount of this delicious coconut caramel topping. Kind of spread it on. And then at the very end, we're going to drizzle on just a little bit of chocolate. Now I'm gonna let these set before eating them, but you can already see that they are copycat Samoa, but sugar cookies. So good.